my name is Kenzie and welcome to a watercolor tutorial. If you would like to paint this without worrying about the sketch, down below you'll see in the description that I have linked the sketch and ebook available that will take you directly to my website, so you can just worry about painting and not the sketching. So for this, we do a lot of the wet on dry technique to get a lot of these fine details for the egg and also the nest itself. So I hope that you have fun painting this along with me. Let's get started. So this right here is my Winsor Newton watercolor paints that I have taken from the tube and put it inside this palette that I got off of Amazon. I have a tapping cloth right here. It's always good to have one. That way you don't have excess water on your page. I also have my 2 water cups right here. One I use for cool paints and one I use for my warmer paint colors. I also have right here my dryer. I like to use this to speed up the process between layers. These are the brushes that I use. These are the silver black velvet. I have size 12, 4, and 8, and these are the round tip brushes. These 2 items I use all the time. This is called masking fluid. It acts as a cover. So wherever I put this masking fluid, let it dry, I can paint over top, can make sure my painting is 100% dry. I can scrape off the masking fluid and that area will be left untouched. So I use this a lot, but make sure to use an old brush because it does get kind of goopy and you'll end up with a broken brush. I also like to use bleed proof white. This is a very highly pigmented white, which will sit on top of any type of color. I'm using this painting as an example. I always like to have painter's tape on hand. I like to paint down my paintings. It's easier to 1, film, and 2, also just keep everything from moving around and it getting a little messy. It also helps to protect your desk, which you'll see mine is very worn. So it definitely does help with that. Get started on our nest. What we're gonna do is, I think we're just gonna put masking fluid over the eggs. So if you have masking fluid, you can apply it on your eggs. If you don't have masking fluid, you can still paint this. Just be careful not to go around your eggs. You just might be limited in your hand motions. The masking fluid's not really expensive either. You can go on Amazon and grab something for like $10, $15. I have that linked in my Amazon storefront if you're not sure which brand to get. I have a couple options, I believe, in there from just different prices. This one is Winsor Newton. I like it, but on Amazon it's not cheap. You can actually go to Michael's and get this cheaper on in Michael's than you can on Amazon. In the meantime, I'm just going to paint my background, let that dry a bit, and I'm going to just do a nice subtle blue sky. I don't want it to be the main focus because I'm going to have my eggs be blue. So I'm just going to do a soft blue in the background. Coming around my tree. Blending out any harsh lines with some water. And then I can come in with a wipe. And I'm just going to blot around some areas. To kind of pick up any pigment. It's super light. Just gonna make it a little bit darker. Some spots. Okay. Oh, I'll come down here as well and do a nice blue sky as well. And then I'll do a little bit of green as well, I think, actually, into the blue, just a hair, so it just kind of looks like there's some grass or something down on that section. So just doing a nice wash, which just means more water than paint, so it's nice and light. Again, I don't want my background to be my main focus as well, so I'm not going to be doing nice, bright, vibrant colors. I'm going to just apply a little bit more green down here. I put blue, but I kind of just covered it up with green. I decided I didn't like it with the green. Sorry, with the blue. I'll have it be more grass. I'm just going to do different variations of green down here and let that blend and bleed out. Okay, so I'm going to dry this so I can move on. So the next thing that I'm going to work on is my little branch back here. And this branch, I'm going to have it be kind of like a grayish tone. So what I'm going to do is with this gray tone, I'm going to come in and just really loosely come and paint the sides. I'm going to get rid of everything on my brush, so it's just water. I'm going to touch this line here in the middle and I can blend it out with water. You have to move pretty quickly here because you don't want this to dry and then you have streaks. And then I'm going to come in and just blot around different areas with some darker shades of a gray brown color for my branches. I can even come in and mix an even darker tone and just touch around different areas. I am also going to incorporate a little bit of green in this and let that blend out. And because this is in the background, I want it to be that wet on wet technique. I do not want to have a lot of details on here, so I want soft blends. So that's why I'm going in and mixing all of these colors while it's still wet. I'm gonna pull more green. I want it to be a little bit darker. So I'm just mixing different shades of green and letting that blend out. And then again, coming in with a little bit of darkness in certain areas. Touching around, letting that blend out. And then just repeating what I did for this side. For my little branches, I'm even going to add a little bit more depth where they kind of connect right in here, make it a little bit darker. I'm going to grab some water and blend it out. I can even scoop with a damp brush if I covered too much. I can even add a little bit of green to the side. And then we've got one more little branch over here. And just doing the same thing. We can lift and scoop different areas, apply different dark points to it, letting it bleed and blend. Okay, I like my branch so far. So this one right here, we're gonna do a mix of wet on wet and wet on dry technique. So similar to this where you have soft blends, that's the wet on wet technique, but the wet on dry technique is where you would come in and apply some fine details because that color will just sit on top. So I'm gonna mix up a little bit more branch colors And I want to go super light. I do not want to go dark. I just mix a little bit of gray with a little bit of a light brown color. And I'm going to start to come in and I'm going to just do some swooping lines all over. And I'm starting with my light colors. So with watercolor, you would start light and then work your way up to your dark points. If you start too dark, you cannot layer. So it's really important for this piece that you go nice and light. You're going to see I'm also leaving some white space. I'm not necessarily caring if I'm staying within my lines, if I'm going over into my sky. It's kind of fun. Okay, so I just did lots of little loops and I'm gonna dry it. Actually, no, I'm gonna add a little bit more darkness, sorry. I'm not gonna dry it just quite yet. While it's still wet, I'm gonna come in and just apply some darker points and let that bleed in a bit as well. Coming in with different tones of my brown. Okay, so now I'm gonna dry it. Okay, so that's my first layer, and I'm just gonna repeat what I just did. So it's really important when you do something like this, have it all dry, that you don't completely cover this first layer. You're gonna wanna let it shine through as well. So I'm gonna come in, and wherever I put it, it's automatically gonna be a bit darker, even if I came in and used the exact same colors, just because the color that the first layer you already have down, sorry, is already really bright and vibrant. So this will just sit on top of that bright color first layer that we have down and just make it that much darker. Now I can start to kind of bring in a few darker values in here. I still don't want to go too dark yet. I'm not ready for anything like that. And now I'm doing more light brush strokes using the very tip of my brush. I'm gonna dry it. Okay, moving on now to my third layer. So I'm going to start to just want to pull in a little bit more detail. So I just switched over to my smaller brush. And I want my outer part, the top, to be lighter than my inside. So I'm going to start mixing up, again, a little bit of a darker color. I pulled in a little bit of red as well. And I want to start to just focus on these brush strokes more so towards the inside where the eggs are. I have an ink mark right around here to show you guys where to stop and start to be a little bit darker. Make sure you're always just mixing up different types of browns. And then towards this back corner right in here, I do want it to be a little bit darker than the front. So I'm going to start to just add a little bit more of a gray back here in this back corner. And I'm going to dry this. And then the outer part of the nest right under here, I want it to be darker as well. So I'm going to come in around this area and add some more darkness. Okay, I'm going to let that part dry a little bit. Let me just add a little bit more gray. Gonna let that part dry. I'm going to come in back here and keep just adding more layers and depths, different shades of brown. And then right under my eggs, it's going to be a lot darker as well. So I'm going to come in and start to kind of shade underneath my little eggs. And now I'm going to do some like flyaway little branches. So using the very tip of my brush, I'm going to come in and just do some flyaway streaks to look as though some of these little branches for the nests are broken. Okay, so I have a good base down for my nest. So what I want to do is I want to come up and lift up for my egg. So I can only do this if everything around my masking fluid is 100% dry. Otherwise, you run the risk of either blurring and smudging your sheet or just like ripping your page. So if you do have masking fluid down, make sure everything around it is dry. So I'm going to put down my first colors for my little egg here. And then I'll worry about my fine details towards the end. So I want this egg to be very bright and vibrant. So I'm going to come in with a nice bright blue. Now what I want to do is I want to leave a nice highlight area. So I'm going to come around And my highlight area is supposed to represent where the sunlight is hitting my egg. So towards the top here, I'm going to leave a nice open white space gap, and I'm going to touch it with some water on my brush. There's no paint on my brush. And as soon as I see that I'm starting to kind of pick up and just move blue, I'm going to get rid of it on my brush, on my napkin, or dip my brush back into the water. And then I'm going to come around and start to just add some different shadows on my egg, still keeping in mind that I want there to be a nice shine. I'm going to get my indigo. My indigo is going to be my nice shadow color towards in here, a little bit over here. Okay, so I'm not going to paint these two eggs. I'm going to kind of let this one dry a little bit more. So I'm going to just do the same thing. I'm going to come in and paint my blue egg. So I saw these eggs and took the picture that we're painting today at my mother-in-law's house last year. And when I saw these eggs, I knew, I was like, oh, I have to paint this. It's so beautiful. The most beautiful eggs I think I've ever seen. I didn't even know eggs came in this color, so I was really surprised when I saw them. And again, coming in with my indigo, just kind of shadowing a little bit, coming in with this nice bright, so I can add the vibrancy that these eggs actually have. I'm going to come in and dry these eggs. And repeat what I just did for these other two eggs. So coming in with my blue, leaving a highlight area, coming in with the indigo for your shadows, and just making sure you're leaving a nice highlight point throughout your egg. That's also somewhat consistent with your other eggs as well. So I'm coming in, getting rid of everything on my brush. I'm tapping this harsh line that I have. I'm grabbing some indigo, tapping below. All right, I want to do 2 layers because I really want to just capture how beautiful these eggs actually are. So I'm going to come in with a nice bright and vibrant blue. I'm going to blend it out with some water. And when you're doing the second layer, same thing as with the nest, you always want to make sure that you're letting those first and second layers shine through. I think I just gotta make sure that I'm still hitting my shadows as well with these eggs. Just making sure I'm coming in with some of my indigo. And you have to have a shadow at both ends because it is an oval shape, so that way your eggs can have its curvature, so you can't just have a shadow just on one side. But this one doesn't have to be on the other side as predominant as the ones closest towards the bottom. So I'm going to dry these. So I'm going to mix up a nice dark brown with some black. And I'm going to come underneath my eggs and I'm going to use tiny little motions in here to do some shadows underneath these little eggs. Keep coming in using some black. All right, so I like how the bottom of this nest is looking, but I am gonna come in and just add some darker points to some of these areas and just keep adding some depth to it. Especially along here a little bit. I'm gonna pull in some of that darkness, just a hair in certain areas. To make it look as though it's curving in. So still I'm using the very tip of my brush. So the more layers that you put down, the more realistic this will be. So just keep putting your layers down until you feel like you're happy with how your depth is looking, how all your pieces are looking. So I'm coming in with my bleed-proof white in here, and along the top, I want to come in with just some lighter brush strokes to make it look like there's some twigs in here. So I am going to come in with this bleed-proof white to just add some lines to make it look like it's lighter at the top. Maybe do a twig that's coming in over top some of these eggs. Maybe over top some of these darker points. All right, there is, oh, you know what I can do as well that I actually love doing is I can come in with this bleed proof white and I can even put it over top this little egg as well. And just give it another cool effect once it's dried. All right, there we have it. This is my little blue egg on top of my nest. I hope that you had fun. Happy painting, friends.